Welcome to One Word a Day. I'm Sophie, your pilot into the universe of Chinese. Today, let's complete the poem we started yesterday, which describing the farming scene, and I translate it as toiling. So as a result, you have to appreciate better the food on your plate. So here we say, 谁知盘中餐? Who knows the plate in meal? Okay, in English, when I translate it literally one by one in English, doesn't make sense, right? Plate in meal. What does it mean? It means meal in your plate. Okay, Chinese think things differently. We are going from outward to inward. We're talking when we talk about locations, we point out the major thing first and then go to details. So 盘中餐 talks about the meal in your plate, right? English, we will define where the meal is after the meal itself, the meal on the plate. But Chinese, we point out the location of the meal, the bigger thing, because the plate is bigger than the meal in the plate, right? So we will point out, okay, it's the plate we look at, and then talk about the meal. So there is the difference in the spatial sense, how we sequentially arrange the spatial. Okay, 粒粒皆辛苦, grain. So here again, we have this Chinese way to repeat exact the same characters twice, give you a sense of each individual grain of rice. 皆辛苦, all of them came from the suffering and the bitterness. So 辛苦 is a term we still use in today's language. Mostly it talks about kind of like a farming, a toiling activity. It's not something enjoyable for you to do, but you have to do. You have to eat the bitterness and suffer the suffer. That's 辛苦. Okay, one by one. 水. This is bird singing. When we hear a bird sing, that's the way, we try to distinguish, identify the bird by the vocal of the bird. So 水, Chinese actually define it by who is that bird that sing, and eventually use the bird sound. We transfer that to human, like distinguish human by the vocals the humans make. The vocal is made of the mouth symbol, and then we have this two convex shape stacking up, connected with one vertical line. That's the indicator pointing toward the inside the mouth, which is the tongue. And then we have two horizontal lines. It's give you the spatial sense of heaven and earth. So you speaking, put your word out to have between heaven and earth. That's our speaking. And then we have the bird symbol. These are the fluffy hair, feathers of the bird, and then we'll have this bird head and little tucked in feet of the bird. This is a verticalized bird in flight kind of view, and we have bird speaking. Just by the sound, we identify which bird that is. Okay, eventually, who, right? Humans, which humans that is. And we have the arrow shooting. This is the arrow shooting out of the bow. This is a zoom in view of the bow's, I guess, the point where the arrow sit on before it gets shot out. So this literally describes the motion when the arrow is right taking off, launched into the air outside the bow. And then we have the mouse symbol again. You see, these are just same structure, a little bit in different proportion. Then this is speaking again. So if you can speak as speedy as arrow, so arrow is an ancient speed representation. That's probably ancient times that the fastest thing we can get, right? The projectiles human find out the way to launch through the air, and that's faster than humans can run or horse can run, and that's the fastest thing ancient times. So if you can speak as speedy speaking, that's how Chinese identify who knows something, because you can identify and talk about it quickly. So that's know. So who knows? 盘中餐. Pan, Chinese use this almost like wine glass holding thing. So these are two finger, the two sides of your holding onto a glass, right? A container, put it on a stand. So this has been used in many, many different containers, especially food containers. And then the top is the boat moving thing. We have the boat. This is the bow of the boat, and then the two sides of the boat and two seaters. So this looks like a two-seater kayak image. The right side is three-finger hand symbol with a whip with sharp edge at the end. So I'm guessing that's in ancient times when a big boat of people rowing is a collaborative effort, and some kind of slave owner whipping the like making the slaves who are boat rowers coordinated, work harder. So the whole thing described as the ancient big man-labored powered boat, and a boat as a shape of something that got to float on water is relatively shallow and flat. And that paired with this eating utensil, it gives you the image of it's almost like a boat shape type of container. And that's a Chinese plate. 中, we have this box, this mouse symbol, again, reoccurring theme, and then with one vertical line cut right in the middle, that gives you the spatial sense of within this, even if we use the mouse symbol, like within this space, the middle line, the middle point, visually showing you it's in the middle of something. So that's a Chinese in. 中, and by the way, 中国, China, is just this character right in the middle, because Chinese self-perceived is the center of the world. So we are right in the middle. Okay. 餐, we have this bone. This is the kind of a joint of a bone, and this vertical horizontal line attachment shows the crack on the bone. And you're having the three-finger hand symbol next to the bone. So Chinese people are chewers of the bone. That is something it's a culture shock that I discovered, because I assumed that's a normal way of eating. But when I came to US, like nobody really chewing on the bone. Like that's too much hard work. At least that's not, because here use fork and knife, you eat with your hand, utensils cut things into bite size. So there's really nothing for you to chew on. In your mouth, it's already cut, ready for you. So the delicacy or the etiquette of dining looks nice, but Chinese actually don't have that. The way of eating, the manner of eating, table manner is totally not in the concern. Food security, having enough food, is the primary concern, was the primary concern back then. So eating, hand holding your food, the broken, fractured bone joint, and chewing every piece of meat off the bone. It's almost like a savage eating type, right? Doesn't civilize, manner at all, but that's the Chinese way of dining. And I totally enjoy that chewing process. Okay. We have the bottom means eating. So this triangle looking thing is gathering. And then we have this, this actually is a zoomed in view of a rice, which is an energetic ball as well. Earlier we talked about the sun symbol, which is a sphere with horizontal line, energy of the horizontal line, and then the sphere, energetic sphere. Here you see the energetic sphere again, and we even have a connector or a sunbeam coming from the sun. So you can view it as the grain of rice is a tiny little bit of capsule of the sun energy. And they look the same, but it's served on the table. You cannot eat the sun, but you can eat the rice. And then you have the kind of shuffle or spoon in there. So the whole thing on the bottom describes the food, the utensil to approach that food, because rice is hard to eat with chopsticks. It can, but easier to scoop it in a spoon. And this gathering means either it's the food, the rice gathered together, or it's the diners who gather together, because dining, I would assume, it was back then a family event as well. When it's a dining time, everybody show up, gather to eat together. So that's the shi at the bottom. And then on the top is simply, this hearty chewing on the bone image. And that make the meal concept in Chinese. 谁知盘中餐? Who knows the meal in your plate? 粒粒皆辛苦. Every single grain, all of them came from or is the fruit of the suffer and bitter. Okay, a pretty heavy image. So we don't, in contemporary living, we don't have food security concern that much. If anything, we want to have fasting more, right? Because we're overeating, oversupply of food, easy access to food, especially processed food. Anyways, in Chinese, this phrase, we're actually appreciating every single grain of rice. We don't assume because it's cheap. At least back then, it didn't came cheap. It's hard labor from, grown from that toiling under the sun with your sweat under the crop. Literally feeding the crop to grow. So every single grain of rice, you can almost view that as single grain of sweat, right? Somebody's hard work embodied in that grains. Everything came from that suffer and bitter. So again, li is the rice symbol on the left side. This separated grain of rice looking thing, each in the quadrant, is an ancient way to classify rice. Because ancient times, rice is a tax form. Farmers, they not necessarily, have a lot of money or currency as we are today in all, dependent on cash economy or currency economy by central government issues some bill. Ancient times depends on which period, right? The rice used to be submitted as percentage of your harvest, submitted as a tax to the government. So that served as the currency almost back then. And so it became super important to correctly grade your rice. So this quadrant is this sorting out of the rice. Eventually mean the grain itself, the rice itself. And then the right side is standing. So rice standing. So it's basically single out each rice as if it's a self-standing. So the standing is made of this two-leg frontal view standing on the ground in front of you. It's almost like a frontal view human, right? Li, again, every single grain. And Chinese, just like in English, we have a day after day, right? But you don't put day together. You have to put some connector word after each other. And here, Chinese have that liberty, just use grain and immediately attach another grain to it. But by repetition of exactly the same thing, it gives you the sense of every single of them repetitively, collectively, right? And this jie is made of, so human figure is leftward for facing. Took me some time to figure out the ancient Chinese time axis pointing toward the left, unlike the contemporary, like a math or any chart reading. Time go from the left to right. That's our default time flowing direction. But let's think about it. This is arbitrary. Who defines time flow from left to right, right? Chinese define from right to left. So leftward facing is the regular or default human figure facing direction. Now, this is rightward facing. So it's kind of a backward facing. Then we put two of them together. In Chinese, we call it 比. That means comparison. Compare the two. At least there are two of them. So that means it's two represent multitudes. Multitudes of them. And then this is the sun symbol, kind of stylized in this way with horizontal line, means the sun ray, right? The energy from the sun. And these are pokey things coming from the sun rays, so under the light. So it described everybody in comparison under the light. We can see it in clear daylight. And that kind of universality, that kind of group of people, this crowd of people, eventually become the concept of all or everyone. So we're counting every single grain. They came from the suffer and bitter. Okay, suffer was said to be the ancient copper punishment tool. So you can see this pointy thing pointing downward, puncturing through a surface. You kind of imagine the inflicting pain over there. Another version of it is it talks about these two horizontal lines, heaven and earth, talks about the seasonal change of the air or the energy of what Earth absorbed from the space, which is coming from the sun, right? Then that energy is going downward and puncturing, going underneath the surface of the ground, so that almost ancient times, without knowing how the solar system works, right? From humans living perspective, that feels almost like the warmth from the outer space came down underground. Below us, that humans, we are left with this unwarmed place. So that's that seasonal change, the after harvest, is marked over here by this warm air going underground. And that's the harvesting time, when associated with that is the dry harvest crop in a field would have a certain spicy sense, aroma, and that is associated with this, suffering or the spicy, pungent smell, and then that's associated with laying the ground to be ready for the new year, and that's the seasonal change, and that's related to suffering eventually to renewing itself, the land getting ready to the next year. So either from the aromatic sense or from the tactile, like a puncturing through your skin as a copper punishment, that character is associated with spice, with suffer. Bitter came from the plant symbol, this grass blade, sun facing upward growing in two. And then we have 10, number 10, this cross without a box around it or without the rice next to it by itself. It means number 10, it came from the rope record keeping back then, tie a knot on the rope. So this vertical line is a rope and horizontal line is the indicator to say there's a knot over there. And record keeping doesn't tie single digit on there. Only when it comes to 10, then a knot was made. And 10 paired with mouse means mouse symbolize one generation, 10 generations to 250 years roughly. That's how Chinese consider it as ancient. So the whole character here is ancient plant. Ancient plant is a Chinese way to express the bitterness came from dried plant that used as herbal medicine back then. So this associated with Chinese herbal medicine that's stored away and dried away for a long time. And then that taste is the bitter. And 辛苦, this puncturing, this pain surface, skin deep pain or nervous pain, paired with the taste of bitterness, as if it's tasting Chinese medicine. Then together is a Chinese general term, 辛苦, to mean your hard work. And 粒粒皆辛苦 came from that hard work. So the background, the first stanza of the poem talks about the toiling of the farmer. And then as a result, the moral of the story is for you to cherish every single grain on your plate. 谁知盘中餐，粒粒皆辛苦. And okay, as a Chinese user and a cultural, I guess, inheritor, I was taught this way. I memorized the poem this way, and as a result, I'm a lifetime no grain left diner that I have to eat up every single grain in my plate. It's probably unnecessary in today's context, but that's a habit, long form, and I still appreciate the food on my plate. All right, thank you for your time. See you next.